AI growth is parabolic, but what does that mean for Micron Technology? Welcome to How to Invest. In today's video, we're going to be answering that question. For those of you who don't know, Micron Technology makes different types of memory products for computers, robots, cars, phones, anything that requires some kind of computer memory. Just so you guys know, I am not really technical with computers. From my understanding, memory is basically what the computer is actively thinking about. That's different from what storage is, which the computer has to go fetch information from storage and then bring it into its like active, basically what it can present to the user. Basically, how much context it has at that moment and can present rapidly to the user. My biggest takeaway from deep diving this company is just how cyclical it is. Look at these graphs. You can see almost like a wave, the revenue going up and down. Me personally, I am a long-term investor. So when I buy a stock, I want to be able to hold it for a really long time, not have to worry about selling it. And cyclical companies don't really fit well into that kind of long-term frame because what you really want to do for these type of cyclical companies is to buy the stock when it is reaching the end of a down cycle. So near the valley of the revenue, and then you want to hold it until you reach one of those peaks, and that's kind of when you want to sell it off. So basically you're timing the market, which one is very, very hard to do, if not impossible. And then second, it means you have to very actively monitor the whole thing. Whereas I like to really understand a company, understand its future growth perspectives, do my deep dive, and then just kind of update myself maybe once a quarter when the earnings call comes out to know if my thesis still stands on the trajectory of the company. And then I'm going to hold that stock for 20 years. I don't want to have to worry about selling it when we reach like some peak in revenue. MU cyclicality is very, very similar to SMCI, which is a stock I covered recently. If you want to watch that deep dive, it's up here in the corner. As you can see from the revenue chart, MU is on its third major revenue cycle since 2018. It's about the same revenue as it was at those other two peaks, though I do think that this cycle is quite different than the last ones, and that is because it is powered by AI data centers. Everyone knows the AI data center build out is absolutely going crazy right now. So I do think it will be meaningfully higher, the top of this cycle, than the other two, but at the end of the day, it still is a cycle. You still have to know where that top is, and there will be a decline in revenue following that. Based on analyst expectations, they believe that it will grow revenue by 45% in 2025, 28% in 2026, and then it will have about a 15% compounded annual growth rate from 2027 and beyond until it will start to fall off and we'll get to the top of the cycle. After we get to the top of that cycle, we'll start to see negative revenue growth. We've seen this 4 times in Micron's history over the past 15 years. And because it is cyclical, it's just the nature of the industry that Micron is in, it will inevitably happen again. Now, with that said, like I mentioned, this AI cycle is much larger. MU is currently very bit constrained, so they are having to allocate those bits towards memory types with higher profit margin, which I do think reflects very well on the management. They are very intelligent and they are allocating their limited bits towards the memory products with the highest margins. And they are building out a ton of new fabs to be able to increase the amount of bits that they are able to output, so they're no longer bit constrained. They're investing about $200 billion in capital expenditures over the next 20 years. So I do think they will continue to have a great future, but they will just continue to go through these boom and bust cycles since it's in a cyclical industry. As I mentioned in my SMCI deep dive, I do think that there will be a AI data center kind of bubble. It may not be like a bubble in the sense of like the 2008 housing market bubble, but there's a great possibility that either the demand will fall off and thus you'll see all these companies that are building these data centers, their revenues will decline, or there may even be an overbuilding of AI data centers. So a lot of times when a new product is super, super hot, tons of companies buy a ton of inventory of that product. And then what you end up happening is they overbuy the inventory, and then a bunch of that inventory sits on the shelves and it takes a long time to clear out. And the producers of that product have a kind of an overhang on their revenue because, the people who are buying a ton of their product all of a sudden have a bunch of their product and don't need to keep buying more. So you could see that same kind of thing play out in the AI data center industry, where they just build out way too many data centers. There's not enough demand for these AI products as they continue continue to get built out. And so you'll see this big decline in the amount of demand for new AI data center build-outs. And you could see a huge, mountain to valley kind of drop in the revenue of companies like Micron, SMCI. I don't think that necessarily means they'll go bankrupt, which is a good time to mention. Micron Technology has a fantastic balance sheet. They have over $50 billion in shareholder equity. So they're definitely able to, live through these kind of valleys in revenue because they do have a strong balance sheet, but that will drastically tank the stock price, which as an investor, that's obviously how you make the money, the stock price increasing or through dividends. They're not going to be paying out dividends during these valleys. They do not have excess revenue. They're not going to be doing stock buybacks when their revenues dip. And that's another thing to mention. When these revenues dip, their margins dip. They have dipped into unprofitability 3 times in the last 15 years, I believe. You can see the chart that's on screen now for the margins, the net margins, and them dipping into unprofitability. Even recently in 2023, they dipped into unprofitability. So that is something that happens, and they do have to rely on that strong balance sheet to make it through those periods when they're not making revenue anymore. And those are pretty much aligned with those kind of valleys in the revenue cycles. So in summary, Micron is definitely benefiting from this AI data center build out. But again, I believe the AI data center build out, as with the entirety of the industries that Micron is in, they're mostly cyclical. And so you will see the revenue increase and decrease with those cycles. And so it does require some amount of timing the market, which I'm not a fan of. I was invested in this company. I am no longer invested in this company. I don't plan on investing in this company again in the future. But I do think if you are into cyclical stocks, it probably is, even though it's kind of at the same peak as it was the last 2 big up cycles, I do think this peak is going to go much higher. So there is probably some room for upward movement in the stock price. Again, this is not financial advice, but that would be my guess in terms of where the stock price is headed as they continue to see all the benefits from the AI data center build outs over the next couple of years. But past that, I don't think it looks super stable or certain for MU, and for that kind of reason, I wouldn't really invest in a company like that. So it's a pretty similar conclusion to what I made for SMCI. Again, you can watch the deep dive for that on our channel. So thank you. Let me know what you think about Micron in the comments below. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next time.